I was asked, one of the things that we've been playing with is, as mentioned, I love doing the scripting, the API calls, the automation. For me, I am the type of person who will spend 2 hours writing a script that will then do a bunch of work in 10 seconds that if I had really just sat down and done it manually would have taken about half an hour. But then I will never have to do that thing again. And I've been, so a number of I'm going to show off 2 scripts today that I've been deploying and have been working in a live fire situation with a couple of our clients. These should not be considered fully functional yet, and they will be posted later today on our GitHub. I am learning GitHub as far as like the actual desktop tools. This is new to me. I'm very familiar with getting other people's codes, but posting code is new to me. So bear with me, but I will then post in the Slack the URL to these scripts. So if anything jumps out, but I also want to say that all of this follows under my motif of, if I have seen further, it is only by standing on the shoulders of giants. So if you're looking at these 2 scripts that I have today and thinking, man, these look familiar, it's because they're not original. These are taking what I have seen in others' work and adapting it for my needs. And because I do like things that are adjustable and flexible, I tend to tweak it, but I am then doing my part in resharing it forward. And what do I mean by that? Let's see. Eric, are you now seeing my Code Runner text window here?
I am.
Excellent.
You know, for all the things that we are today, we're smooth on the transitions. I love it, Chad.
I got to be smooth somehow because it's not in any other part of my life. So the first script I'm playing around with, and many of you have already, many of you have seen scripts that do this. In fact, I specifically mentioned, there's the giant whose shoulder I am standing on for this one, that need of being able to give people temporary admin access while maybe not having admin privileges all the time. You know, I first started playing with this a few years ago with a client, and I pretty much just took the original one and went with it. One of the things that was interesting that I found happened, and I'd be interested to see if anybody knows either A, why this happened, or if they encountered it themselves. The original script that I'd been playing with broke late last year, shortly late Catalina, just before Big Sur, because, and I'm going to jump down to this part before I go for the whole thing. In the process of removing the launch daemon, I had to change the order of this. If you unloaded the launch daemon, it stopped the script. Got it in a different order. There we go. This used to be higher up. If you unloaded the launch daemon, it completely terminated the script that it was driving. Whereas in previous behavior, I could remove the script and clean everything up, and then unload the launch daemon. I could remove the files and then unload it. And yeah, that stopped working. So that's one of the things that got fixed in all this. But some stuff that I've done to kind of make this my own, if you will. In the original version from Jamf, it lists the 3 different places you have to change the time, because one is done in minutes, one is done in seconds, and the other one that is done in a format of like 90M or something to that effect. So I hate anytime I needed to redeploy something, changing things even once, anything hard coded. So I added a parameter 4 to say how long, and I've got a default in here for 5 minutes, but that way you can in the policy that runs it, and that way I could have multiple versions of the same policy, one for different teams. Maybe a developer will get 15 minutes, maybe somebody else would only get, the average user will only get 1 minute. But the other thing that I had added, and this came back to when I first implemented this at my last full-time job, was the joy of people just pushing the button and I had no idea what they were using it for. So I put in an AppleScript dialog that would pop up and say, please state briefly why you need this. So for this, because I had of our clients we deployed it with, one cared, one did not. So I just simply made it a parameter so I could keep updating one script and just updating it in the client's Jamf Pro servers without having to keep tweaking everything. And then next up, this was a more interesting challenge. I wanted the ability to, because I personally dislike having policies where you're just scoping it to one or two computers. And because especially when you're looking at your list of policies, it just says two computers, and then I have to go in and see which ones. What if instead, and yes, I know this still requires another click, but what if I scope it to a static group? And then I can authorize people by adding them to that static group. But then the challenge, either way, the challenge is, okay, somebody needs admin rights. I add them to the static group, or I add them to the scope of the policy. They push the button in self-service. They enter their reason. They get their admin rights, but they can just turn around and push the button again until I go in and remove it. So what I did was create the ability that if you enter one of this API hash, and yes, I just talked about this, it's really just a base 64 encoded thing. If you provide that base 64 encoded username password, and yes, the next version will hopefully use the token system, it will then remove the person from that static group at the end of the run. So as soon as they push the button, the first thing it does is removes them from the group. Then it goes ahead and gives them admin rights. Something that in the original version of the script I didn't see fully implemented at the time I stole this was, and let's see, I was going to reference something of 400 class, and then I remembered I probably shouldn't discuss things from the 400 class, so I won't. But the idea of using a log collect at the end of it to just say, what were the people doing while they had admin privileges? What kind of stuff were they doing? And this section, if provided, will run this log collect command for that. And here's, you can see where the M was referencing in time in minutes. It will attach that file. It'll run this, it'll zip it all up, do everything, and then attach that file at the end. So now you have a file attachment for that computer's record to see what the heck were they doing if you really care. Again, and it's a lot of these examples that I'm showing you are because both clients running in parallel wanted these scripts, but one wanted it done one way, one wanted it done another. I wasn't about to write two different scripts, so how about I make it a parameter? And then the other challenge in my original version of this was stupid of me. I didn't actually have a check to find out if they were already an admin. So if you were already an admin, it would promote you to admin, and then at the end of the interval, demote you to standard. It didn't have any sanity check. And I believe the Jamf version, the current Jamf version of it does already have that, if it didn't already. And then there's my cleanup. And my cleanup version versus theirs, I just put in some additional lines. One of the things I could do here is if you've requested logging, there's where is it? I'm not finding it. Oh, there we go. If the person requested logging, I just swap out this particular comment block to actually include that little bit of code to handle the upload. And then this is after that, it's everything you already seen. The one challenge then that I threw in at the end, and I'm debating whether or not to take this out, had the wonderful situation of being told that when they would push the button, they weren't an admin. And it took me a little debugging to find out what they meant. They were staring at users and groups in system preferences and saying, I pushed the button and I'm not an admin, because you need to leave system preferences and come back in to see the change, but they just kept pushing the button. So just to be able to help our clients with their users, I put in at the end a verification to say, yes, in fact, I show they did get promoted. So if somebody's saying it didn't work, yes, it did. Try doing something with admin privileges now. It's a silly thing I would rather not have to have, but it's one of those kind of things sometimes we have to have. So maybe this is I don't want to call it a better version, but maybe this is a more interesting version to some people. If you have any questions, comments on this, I'd love to hear them. As I said, I will have this later today up on our GitHub. The link will be posted into the Slack server. And yeah, any changes, suggestions anyone has, I am not claiming to be an expert.
Chad,
Just
is this, what would you say like the percentages that we use this with our clients? Are you using this with everybody who wants it? Are you using this with everyone?
I think we're currently using it with everyone, or at least I should say everyone with
Everyone
whom
that's standard.
I'm associated to. Yeah, I mean, I'm not on every single client, but every client I'm involved with, we're using it.
It's very nice. Chad, I do have one recommendation.
Please.
Maybe you were saying that when they're in system preferences, looking at their profile list and show that they were elevated to admin, but maybe just have a command to just quit out of system preferences. So it just quits it, and then they reopen it, and then they see that, oh yeah, I am an admin.
I like that idea, or yeah, even or have a follow-up dialogue that just says, yes, you've been promoted. I like that idea. Just some sort of follow-up to be a little heavy-handed so that the actual end user sees it, as opposed to having to say, I'm not seeing it and somebody else correct it. I like that idea. I'm going to add that.
I thought I saw in the script there was a dialogue that pops up. You've been granted
admin rights, but as was mentioned then, but if I'm staring at system preferences, it still shows me as standard until I quit it and reload it.
Yeah, it's actually a good point, Peter, because the problem we were having with clients is they were testing it out and they'd be sitting there with like the tech that was working with them. They're like, we ran the script, we went into system preferences, they're showing as standard, then we try to authenticate as admin, we can't do it. Well, it's like, well, yeah, because you just had system preferences open the whole time. Even if you try to authenticate, it's not going to work. So yeah, quitting out of system preferences would be really good.
Yeah, there was something I did like that quite some time ago where I was getting the same thing where the people were watching it live and saying, no, it's still there. And I was like, oh, okay, and I know how to fix this. I just quit the system preferences.
Another thing we might want to try out, Chad, where you might not even have to do quit system preferences, is kill cfprefs-d. I'm not sure if that would affect it, but I know I've ran into that more times than I can count, where it's like, why isn't this thing working? And then it's like, oh yeah, it's cached in cfprefs-d.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea too. And probably take it to take both approaches. And the next script I'm about to show off, you'll see, is just the epitome of how many possible ways can I do this, and how many ways can I make it more complicated than it needs to be. So this may be making these more complicated, but I think it's in the right track for it. Cool. And then the other one I wanted to show off today, and I'm trying to be mindful of time. Thinking about the situation, especially as we're dealing with people being remote, and I know there are people in the room that have done versions of this, so I'm prepared to be embarrassed. What happens if you don't want to necessarily I absolutely hate and always preach the idea of not having the same username and password backdoor admin account on every single machine. What happens if that gets corrupted, and Jamf has decided they like my idea because, or not my idea, but I mean, they like that idea because they have for the management account rotating, having as a random password, they suggest strongly, don't make this the same username and password on every single computer. It's all over Jamf. Whenever you try to put the same username and password with admin rights on every machine, it gets you that nice little warning. So because Apple doesn't have built-in and Jamf doesn't currently have built-in, I say currently because there is a feature request for it, and man, did I upload it, to have some sort of local access, and I don't remember what LAPS stands for, something password, local administrator password. Anyone? Bueller? I don't
Solution,
have
I think. Solution.
Okay, we'll go with that.
It's local administrator password solution.
Okay, cool. Confirmation. Excellent. I found a number of these, and it's been a request. Almost every jumpstart I do, somebody has a request for it. And what is interesting is with the two clients I mentioned where I've got both of these in parallel, what kind of situation might you need a LAPS type system with a rotating backdoor admin account and the ability to promote somebody to admin. Initially, at the outset, it sounds like you're taking two radically different approaches to the same thing. But with the make me an admin, it's letting a user become admin temporarily. With this, it's about having so that if I'm remote controlling somebody's screen through TeamViewer or what have you, I can then do it using an admin account without giving them any additional privileges. But this system borrows, like I said, heavily on, you can find so many of these different tools out there. Mine borrows a lot of them. So the two parameters up front that you're no big surprise, I'm passing in what is the username that either needs to be changed or created. And then what's that full name to go with it, whether it be, backdoor admin, Jamf admin, whatever you want to call it. And then I've seen different methods of it. I have the option of 4 different schemes for generating a password. And I'm going to, before coming back to the rest of these, talk about those. The first one, and oddly and pleasantly, the one that is currently in use with 3 customers. We're using NATO so that way what you're saying over the phone, you need to enter into the password Whiskey, Tango, Foxtrot. Yes, I chose those 3 intentionally. It picks 3 NATO characters, phonetic characters at random and strings them together. And that way it's something that's easy to say over the phone. It's longer text. And yes, if you know that's my password scheme, now you only have 26 to the 3rd, or in the case of one of our clients, 26 to the 4th. Combinations you have to try before you can get in. But at the same point, the operating system is not going to let you try that many failed passwords. Second one, if you've read the comic, and I have it here in the source code, please take a moment, read this comic. I think it's funny, but it's the idea of, he mathematically shows that taking a complicated password, taking the word troubadour and changing an O to a 0 and putting in an exclamation mark and a number, those changes do not significantly increase the randomness or make it significantly harder for a computer to break. They make it a lot harder for a human to remember. Whereas taking 4 words and stringing them together, in his version, it's correct horse battery staple. And it says, what are the, how long does it, what's the ease of memorizing it? You've memorized it already. Years later, I still have not forgotten correct horse battery staple. I'm just borrowing. When somebody showed me this a few years ago, I was super pleased. There's a dictionary right in the operating system. Obviously, it has to be there to check your spelling. So I just say, find me anything that's at least 3 letters, but less than 7, or sorry, between 4 and 6, greater than 3, less than 7. Strings them together and makes the first letter of each word capitalized. So similar to my Whiskey, Tango, Foxtrot type of thing. Next up, I should say, it does the exact same thing, but with the proper nouns database. So it could be Chad, Eric, Chris, Ian as the password for this. And then last but not least, because one of the shoulders I stood on was University of Nebraska's implementation of it, where they just generate random characters of hexadecimal, strip out ambiguous characters, O's, zeros, ones, I's, L's, S. They leave in 5 and 2, which are 5, but yeah. And it grabs 16 random characters. So once you've decided which way you want to provide it, and like I said, right now, all 3 clients doing the NATO, which is just fun. There we go. This was my bigger challenge for this. I would be interested to hear if anyone else has ever tried doing within a script an API call to send information up to Jamf, and something happens that causes that to fail. That's probably not terrible unless what you're doing is sending up to an extension attribute, sending a password, and if that password gets lost, you have no way of recovering it. So I implemented, because we did have, again, 3 customers using it. 2 of them had no problem with the API call, but one of them, it seemed like every 3rd user the extension attribute would come up empty. Same script, same exact script. I did not know why. So my solution for it was to borrow from, and let's see if this shares properly. Are you now seeing a YouTube page, Eric? Okay, I'm getting the nod. That'll do since you muted.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. This is from a JNUC presentation from a couple of years ago. Even though it's called using reverse extension attributes, he says a couple minutes in that really what he's doing is calling them local extension attributes. It's using a defaults write command and then a defaults read command to put information in a appropriately permissioned folder or file on the system. So that way a user shouldn't be able to wander in and get that information off of it. And yes, I am going to be working on encrypting this information in the near future. I did say at the beginning, all of this was still a work in progress. But it takes the idea, let's go back over. If you specify local, then it actually stores it in a local extension attribute or reverse extension attribute, a plist, whatever you want to call it. And I'll loop back to that in 1 second, but there's no point in pausing before saying, then the last parameters, do you want to force this or not? If I specify force, and this was another tie into that earlier issue. What happens if I don't know what the old password is and I want to be able to change it? I get an error message. That doesn't do me any good. If this backdoor admin account, let's call it, no, I'm not going to bother. Well, let's call it break class because that's my favorite, right? In case of emergency, break class. So for the break class account, if you don't know what the password is, I can't change it. Regardless of running as a root script. So if you say force, it will attempt to and so if it can't figure out the password and you've specified force, it will attempt to delete the account and then turn around and create it again. Is this a great idea? Maybe. Chris looks like he's ready to.
Yeah, I just wanted to explain kind of why we needed this because we're working with a lot of clients who, they've been using Jamf for 10 years, but they've had like 20 different systems and all these different backdoor admin passwords on their computers. They really don't know what the backdoor admin password is on any given computer. So it's like, all right, if you're fine with it and you don't have any files in that user's home folder, we can put this button on to force it, and then we'll delete that account and create a new one with a password that we recognize. So now we can continue to do this secure rotation of a password that people actually know.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, because that's a good point. I was describing it more from the standpoint of what happens if you lose that from the other situation. But yes, that's the entire reason this originally got put in was, I'm sure we've all been in situations where you've got previous tech directors or previous people that, oh, I just picked some password at random. Well, where is it stored? I don't know. I just keep trying things until I figure it out. So this is meant to get around that. And then the last thing I was going to say is, well, okay, if I'm storing this locally, how do I get this into Jamf? The other thing I will be putting in this same folder on GitHub is I have an extension attribute, a script-based extension attribute that just does a defaults read of that attribute, of that plist file, and grabs out the password. So now all I'm doing is instead of attempting to have the API send the information to Jamf, I'm letting Jamf pull the information off of the computer. That way I know the information is secure on the computer. I should say safe on the computer. I'm still working on complete security. The next version of this, which is in progress right now, is going to allow for both of these to happen. So you can have both stored where it will either put it in an extension attribute in Jamf Cloud or store it locally or both. Because I'm trying to provide every possible option. But yeah, this is my version of something. Again, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. I'm not the first one to do this. I'm not even close to the first one to do it. Joshua Miller did one, including doing it as a Swift binary. His impresses the heck out of me. I don't know if anybody has tried it and what results they found from it. As I mentioned before, University of Nebraska has their own version of it. Theirs is so old, it still refers to stuff as Casper. So mine is not unique, but it accounts for a number of situations that we've encountered. So I'd love to hear if anybody has any thoughts, comments, criticisms. If you found a spelling mistake, I'll take it.
Chad, we got a question in the chat.
Oh, I don't have the chat window open. Yeah, thank you.
Does it also add the admin user to File Vault, or does that require a separate piece?
That is a excellent question. I was finding, actually, let me see if it's in my create account. Password home. Short answer, I don't know. I thought I found, but I'm now that I was just about to make a definitive statement like, I've seen it work. And then I realized, have I really? So I'm not 100% sure. I would love to believe that in doing it this way, creating as an admin account, that it does provide that. I will now, in fact, I should write that down.
Pretty sure in Big Sur they fixed that. It was Catalina that was the biggest problem. But within Big Sur, they've relaxed on their requirements, and now even the create account script will generate the secure token for the user.
It will. Okay, so you're saying they fixed it, meaning made it easier, so that this is a good thing. Okay.
Yeah. Mo was a crapshoot. Catalina, they locked it down real hard, and then Big Sur, they pulled back on those requirements so much so that we actually had an instance where we had a random baloney LDAP account get generated for the bind purposes, and they relaxed so much that that bind account was the first one with that secure token, and because it was a randomly generated password and username each time the bind occurred, Mac OS couldn't delete it, and then nobody could get a secure token after that because it caused the system to behave in a very strange fashion.
Oh, wow.
And I'm really glad, actually, Ian, I'm glad you said that, because that was another interesting challenge we ran into. And it goes back to what Chris was saying about why we did this with those. When we set up workflows for zero touch provisioning, the idea for one particular client was they would just let it go through setup assistant. And when it got to the create an account window, what they should create is the account for the user that's going to be using it, because it will create it as standard. But because we were changing the workflow from what they had used previously, there were a couple of machines where that first account being created, had what was, they ended up creating the same account that my script was going to come in and create. So they were creating break glass only for my script to attempt to create break glass. But like you said, it's the one with the secure token. So it was failing all over the place because I don't know what the password is. So I can't change it. So I'm going to attempt to force it and delete it. I can't delete it because it has a secure token and is the only one with a secure token.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's been a fun behavior to learn from.
Yeah. I love the clients we get to work with that allow us to do zero touch provisioning and don't want to tinker with it beforehand. Because I find it takes a lot of instruction to be like, no, do things simpler. Don't do as much.
Yeah. It's also fun for us when we get here's the 17 pages that we spend, 2 hours setting up every new computer. I can automate all of that for you. And this is one of those. Anybody else? And so especially if you're interested in this, if you're in the Slack, let us make a note. It'll kick me in the pants a little harder to get this posted. I am committing with Chris and Eric right in front of me to getting this done today, though. And with that, unless there are any other questions, concerns about any of these scripts, I will also, if people are interested, post of the previous lapse implementations and the link to the reverse extension attribute into the Slack as well, if people are interested.